El día de hoy vamos a estar hablando sobre algunos temas que tienen que ver con el amor a la literatura. El amor a la literatura, como se expresa precisamente a través de uno de los grandes novelistas contemporáneos, que es justamente Amos Oz. Y entonces tanto Galia como Daniel van a hacer algunos comentarios sobre los temas de los que versa esta conversación.
Wish I could be in Mexico in the Festival of Guadalajara. I really wish I could go there. Being unable to physically attend the festival, let this for my personal presence in Guadalajara. Let this interview represent me and convey my thoughts and my feelings to the other participants of the festival in Guadalajara. Also, my daughter Galia, an excellent writer, and my son Daniel, an excellent poet, will be there in Guadalajara, and they are the best parts of me.
Aquí en Jerusalén en 1939 nació Amos Oz. Acompáñenos en este programa especial de Canal 22, en donde conversaremos con el escritor Amos Oz sobre lo que la literatura nos descubre y revela sobre el laberinto de nuestra identidad.
Amos Oz es considerado como uno de los más importantes escritores israelíes contemporáneos. Ganador del Premio Príncipe de Asturias, fue uno de los fundadores del movimiento pacifista israelí Shalom Achshav. Sus novelas y ensayos son reconocidos internacionalmente por su exploración profunda de la condición humana.
Amos Oz, thank you very much for this interview for Channel 22 in Mexico. In Mexico, we have a great poet, Octavio Paz, who wrote a book called The Labyrinth of Solitude, in which he depicts the Mexican culture. In some way, with your book, Jews and Words, with your daughter Fania, you did the same, but vis-a-vis the Jewish and Israeli culture. Let's talk about the sensibilities that are revealed through literature, about the culture.
I think reading literature is the best way to travel. If you buy a ticket and you go to Paris and you see the buildings and the museums and the parks and the boulevards, and if you are lucky you talk to some people in a cafe and you buy some postcards and you take some snapshots and you go home. But if instead of going to Paris you read, let us say, Marcel Proust, you are invited not only to the monuments and the boulevards, you are invited inside the bedrooms of another people, inside the kitchens, inside the nurseries. You become part of that other culture. So for me, the best way to travel is to read a book about another people, another culture, and another country. And it's
I'm talking about Israeli culture. If we want really to know Israeli culture, what does literature reveal?
I write very closely about what I know best. And what I know best is the story of the Jewish people and the story of Israel. I am the child of immigrants who fled Europe by the skins of their teeth in the 1930s, brought with them to this country a whole European tradition and a whole Jewish tradition. My parents left Europe. Actually, they were kicked out of Europe in the 1930s. They brought with them European culture and Jewish culture, secular Jewish culture, not religious Jewish culture. When my daughter Fania Salzberger and I recently published a book called Jews and Words, this is exactly about this blend of Jewish culture with European secularism, with Arabic influences, with Aramaic influences, with Greek and Latin influences. This conglomerate, which is the blessing of Judaism.
Instead of talking about bloodlines, we could talk about text lines.
Text lines. I believe, Fania, my daughter Fania Oz, we both believe that The line of Jewish sequencing is not a bloodline. It's not about genes. It's not even about synagogue. It's about a huge collection of texts written over thousands of years. And those texts relate to each other, just like my own novels and stories relate to the Bible, to the Mishnah, to the entire heritage. And the texts are the Jewish pyramids. The texts are the Jewish cathedrals. The texts for the Jews are what the China Wall is for the Chinese. This is what the Jews have given to themselves and to the world, texts. We are a people of texts. We talk about texts. We read texts on holidays by the dinner table. We read texts and discuss the texts. And when Jews had to flee from pogroms and persecution, from one country to another, in the middle of the night, they had to leave home and run away. They took with them the children and the books.
The treasures, the real treasures.
Yes.
In this way, there are some sensibilities that are emphasized in this culture, this Israeli culture. One of them is a game of interpretations, because you're always trying to have interpretation of these texts. They are not fixed.
No, in good times, the Jewish life, spiritual life, was an open-ended game of interpretation, counter-interpretation, and reinterpretation. Everyone was entitled to interpret. Every boy, when he reached the age of 13 and celebrated his bar mitzvah, his confirmation, he was expected to say in synagogue a chidush, a novice, something original about the texts. Not something that he learned by heart, not something that he memorized, but something that he invented. This was a tremendous encouragement to creativity and to originality. And the idea is that everyone is a rabbi. You know, it's not for nothing that the Jews never had a pope. Nor could they have a pope. If any human being ever calls himself or herself the Pope of the Jews, everybody will be approaching this Pope, slapping him on the back, saying, "Hi Pope, I don't know you, you don't know me, but my grandfather and your uncle used to do business together back in Minsk or back in Casablanca. And therefore, please be quiet for just 5 minutes and let me tell you once and for all what is it that God really wants of us." This is how it works with Jews, and I like it.
And this is also what, in a sense, you rescue when you talk about the work story about Pierre Menard, author of Don Quixote, because you reinterpret the text in such a way that you write the same text, but it's your own.
It becomes original, because you don't only rewrite it. While rewriting it, you reinvent it. You live it once again. You see the images with your own eyes, not with the eyes of Cervantes. You hear the sounds with your own ears, not with the ears of Cervantes. You take in the smells with your own nose, not with the nose of Cervantes. You recreate Don Quixote. This is the idea of Pierre Menard by Borges, and we think this is a good way to understand what the Jewish tradition is all about.
There is something very special that you say, that these sensibilities are emphasized in Jewish culture and in Israeli culture, but they are not chauvinistic, because they belong to everybody. They are universal, but they are emphasized in this culture.
They are accessible to everybody because they are texts. They are not shrines. They are not monasteries. They are not cloisters. They are texts. Everybody can approach those texts either directly in Hebrew or in translation. But also they are full of arguments. Our civilization is a civilization of doubt and argument. Everyone is entitled to shed doubt, and everybody is encouraged to argue. Here in Israel, every line by a bus stop in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem can easily catch a spark and turn into a passionate street seminar with total strangers waiting for the bus arguing about politics and history and morality and religion and the real purpose of God, with the participants of such a street seminar, total strangers, while they disagree with each other on political and metaphysical good and evil, they nevertheless elbow their way to the top of the line. This is the Mediterranean side of Israel. As I said many times, this society comes out of a Fellini movie, not out of a Ingmar Bergman film. And you will find a reflection of this in my novels and in my stories, and you will find a study of those urges and foundations in the non-fiction book Jews and Words, which I wrote together in my book.
Yo quisiera entonces ahora que con Galia y con Daniel charlemos un poco en relación a los temas que se han tocado, that we chat a little bit about the themes that have been touched here.
I myself am not such always an admirer of Jewish tradition passed on by texts. I think a lot of it is very chauvinistic. Quite a lot of it has a lot of sense of hating any Gentile, any stranger, any outsider. A very strong urge to keep the religion, the group, or the tribe together with no entries from outside. I guess our tradition has both. It's a fanatic side is very strong yet today, I'm afraid, in Israel itself. There is a very strong struggle between liberalism, between universalism, which is a strong side also in Judaism, and between the very theological, nationalist, extremist part. This is, I think, the big sort of problem that divides Israel today. So my view is a little less idyllic on the matter. Yet I agree about the texts. Words are, of course, very important. I'm not sure it's so much a Jewish thing. I think so many cultures have developed through words.
I think if you want to find the peculiarity of the Jewish and Hebrew text line, something that really distinguishes it from other linguistic literary traditions is the fact that Hebrew, the language and the literature involved, its history is very, it's not continuous. You know? There's the biblical times, and then it lies dormant until medieval Spain, where there's a great revival, the Jewish Golden Age, and then again, because of the persecutions, etc., there's another very long pause, centuries sometimes. And I find, I think that for writers, for modern Hebrew writers, there's a very interesting and peculiar situation that we have a language that has different geological layers. You know, other languages, there's a continuity. So you have an archaic version of English or Spanish, but there's a certain linear evolution that you can follow, and it's not so sharp, the division. In Hebrew, there's a great obstacle where sometimes you have to choose between terminology that is ancient and terminology that is very modern, and this is a challenge that I think writers, modern Hebrew writers face, and it's, in a sense, it can be very limiting, but it's also you know, enticing. It also gives you cause for creativity, to find creative solutions to bridge these gaps in our linguistic history.
Se está demostrando esta idea de la tradición del debate que va entre padres e hijos y que realmente está viva, y que lo más interesante, y que eso enfatiza Amos Oz, es que estamos hablando de que los textos precisamente son universales, y que cuando hablamos de una cultura hablamos de algo que se enfatiza. Y esto es muy importante porque de otra manera estaríamos hablando de nacionalismos. Y lejos de hablar de nacionalismos, yo creo que de lo que se trata justamente es de hablar de aquello que por tradición o memoria se enfatiza en una cultura. Y bueno, en este marco vamos a otra parte en donde vamos a hablar de otras de las tradiciones que también se enfatizan, que tienen que ver precisamente con el sentido de justicia, que es algo que penetra profundamente esta sensibilidad en la cultura israelí, pero por supuesto es universal. El sentido de justicia y de injusticia, todo ser humano que sea digno del nombre tiene que tenerlo. Y hay partes de esta tradición que defienden esa parte de la memoria, hay partes de otra tradición, de la misma tradición, que pueden ser fanáticas al respecto. Y eso creo que lo tenemos que tener muy claramente en cuenta.